quorum. Amanda is participating via telephone, so I'll call the meeting to order, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have Michelle Devine in our audience tonight, who is running for the Board of Education. Welcome, Michelle. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I should always say this, I frequently don't, but we do have a policy, policy 1120, that prohibits any public comment concerning any employee of the Board of Education, be it positive or negative. Is there anyone who wishes to make some public comments tonight? Okay, hearing none, we can move to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or corrections concerning the consent agenda? Okay, someone like to make a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Amanda.
Sorry.
Motion passes unanimously. I've already done the introduction of visitors. Let's see. Correspondence. Tom, I know we had some traditional notices as to when we have to post our public meetings with the town clerk. And Maureen also wants to know if we change our representative. Anything else of significance? Superintendent's report. Tom.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Tonight is the annual State Summative Assessment Report to the board and the community. I'm going to give a brief introduction before I hand it off to Assistant Superintendent Powers. Tonight we're going to look at both achievement and growth metrics in great detail. Really now we're measured against state set targets in each of those areas. I'm extremely proud of our staff, administration, and students, as you will see in the data tonight. While we know this is only one measure of progress in our district, it is an important one. The number of students meeting and exceeding standard is the highest Waterford has ever had on the SBAC assessment, and this is something to be proud of. Particularly of note are the gains in mathematics at CLMS, so much so that they presented last week at a statewide conference. I'll spare you many of the highlights, as I know Mr. Powers will cover those in greater detail in his PowerPoint. We're also very cognizant of the areas that we need to develop further. We want every cohort in our district to show growth. We want all students, even students performing at high levels, continue to grow in their academic achievement. We analyze grade level data to determine why some grade levels may achieve at greater rates than others. Every level of our district, from central office, our district data team, our administrative teams, school leadership teams, and professional learning communities comprised of our teachers, are engaged in this very work each and every day as we continue to assess our students in an ongoing manner to adjust instruction. And while the cohort growth from PSAT 10 to SAT 11 shows our average scores on ELA and math increasing significantly, the percentage of students making proficiency did decline in those particular cohorts. That means the students who continue to meet proficiency performed extremely well. But we are analyzing why those who met proficiency on PSAT did not meet proficiency on SAT. With that said, our district's continuing focus on the analysis and use of data to inform instructional decisions remains strong and will only become better with the implementation of our data warehouse, for which teachers will be trained at the November 5th PD Day. Now Mr. Powers is going to give a comprehensive overview, as he always does, each and every year of our data, and more importantly, our response to that data. Again, I celebrate our team and our students on their hard work that has resulted in positive gains. Our work is never done, and we continue to focus on getting all students to learn at high levels. I want to thank Craig for the deep dive he does each year to build this report, but more importantly, the work he does each day in guiding our team and enhancing teaching and learning in our schools.
Thank you.
So this is the 5th year for the SBAC administration, and you've seen this slide in the past, but just to kind of remind ourselves that when we look at achievement scores or proficiency, it's a one-time snapshot. It's how the students are performing on the test. And then when we talk about growth, it's the change over time. And the state sets growth targets for students to achieve, and that's a component of the growth data. So that's there. So if we go into the executive summary, let's first say that this is how the state measures us on the Next Generation Accountability Index, that being the 3 through 8 aggregate data. Obviously, the more we sum up the data, the harder it is to disaggregate it down to the classroom level, but we first start with the top level view and we'll work our way down. You can see here with the performance of achievement as well as the growth, and I'm going to just highlight those that we have gone up each year in the past 3 years with both achievement and growth. With ELA achievement 1.8 over last year, with math achievement 8.3 percentage points. With growth for ELA 5.3 percentage points, and with math growth 13.3 percentage point gains. Statistically significant. While we'll cover this in the report too, you can see that we're very proud with the strong achievement in grades 3 through 8 for math. The middle school made the greatest gains, and the levels of achievement is really a combination of factors that include the new math instructional resources or texts that the board approved last year, the daily instructional coaching with the math coach in the classroom, and as a whole department, the very strong level of coherence in the delivery of the curriculum material. With ELA, we continue to show high achievement. Waterford grades are in the expected achievement band, which is level 3, with half the grades in the high level 3 band. SAT scores continue to be above the state average. With that being said, there's work to be done. You will hear how we are focusing the high school similarly to as we did the middle school the past few years and the elementary prior to that. Now looking at the ELA data for grades 3 through 8. Again, you can see that the combined score, which is levels 3 and 4, have consistently increased over the past 3 years. This year we're showing a combined score of 70.1% of the students performing on the SBAC in that met or exceeded band. Additionally, I'll have you note, if you notice the level 4 band, we've got more than 1/3 of the student population at that very highest level band, which is of particularly note. Now, if we compare to the state, you will see that half of our grades are in that 70%, and the other half are really not far away from that 70% achievement. And there is a range between 10 and 20 points difference between us out-achieving the state. So again, all good indicators. As we look at the achievement levels, as far as the average vertical scale score, you will see that all the Waterford grades are in the expected achievement band of level 3, and half are in that high level 3 band. The contributing factors to this, again, is the consistent Readers and Writers Workshop is in place, the job-embedded professional development through the literacy instructional coaches, as well as elementary principals ensuring that the routines and depth of instruction are occurring daily. From the previous slide, which was the same data, the average vertical scale scores, you can now see them over time with the elementary maintaining or remaining strong, but the middle school having great gains this year with grade 6, that yellow line, going up 9 points, grade 7, that teal line, second from the top, going up 21 points, and grade 8, that olive band, going up 15 points. Another way to look at it is through a match cohort. So as the same group of kids, because the previous slide was the same grade level over time, and as you look at the same kids over time, you have to realize that the expectation every year is increasing annually. So to maintain students in the band while adding more students into the gold band is a challenge, and many of the cohorts rose to that challenge with between about 5 or 6 percentage point growth, and one band had a slight decline, but again, the expectations are always increasing. Now we're going to look at growth a little bit more. So as you can see from this chart, for the past 3 years, Waterford has continually increased the number of students making their state-assigned growth target, as well as the aggregate percent of students on the target achieved by all students have increased each year for the past 3 years. If you look at this, for math now, again, the math has gone up each of the past 3 years in that expected level 3 or 4 band. I'll have you note again that the expectation for that highest level band, we've gone from 1 in 4 students to well over 1 in 3 students in that highest band. And if we look at the very lowest band, we've decreased the number of students in that lowest band from 16 to 13% over the past 3 years. This year, in aggregate, while we've increased every year of the test, we've jumped 8.3 percentage points over last year. Now again, if we look at math scores compared to the state, you will see that in each of the six tested grades, Waterford outperformed the state in a range of 12 to 28 points, to 22 points, and a combined average of 17 points above the state. And you can also see how we are rising our math grades very close to the level of our English language arts grades, where in the past there was a stark difference. So we look at the math achievement for the average vertical scale scores. All but one grade at one school are in that expected achievement band of level 3, with many grades into that high level 3 band. The middle school has shown great advancement in math with all grades in the level 3 band. You may recall 2 of the grades before in the middle school were in the approaching band. This, again, great gain, as Tom had mentioned, was one of the reasons why the state asked a team from the middle school to present at the statewide Performance Matters Conference earlier this month. So if we look at these vertical scale scores over time, we can see that for each of the 3 years in grades 3 through 8, you'll see all grade levels trending with improvement between 3 and 29 points, with grade 3, the blue line, increasing by 13 points over last year, grade 4 increasing by 3 points, the green line, grade 5, the red line, increasing by 13 points, Grade 6, the yellow line, increasing by 22 points. Grade 7, the teal line, increasing by 29 points. And grade 8, the olive line, increasing by 11 points. So we've focused on math, and the outcomes are showing. We look at the matched cohort. Again, with ever-increasing expectations that almost all of the cohorts have demonstrated gains by 9 or 10 points, with one cohort showing just a slight decline. As we look at now math growth, you can see again that for the past 3 years we've continued to show better growth, with the 55% of the students meeting their growth target set by the state, and 74% with the percentage of target achieved. Compare the 74 to the 62 of the state. Most of our students are making most of the math assessments into the expected levels. Now as we shift to SAT, you will see we continue to exceed the state in both ELA and math. ELA by 9.8 percentage points, and math by 9.2. While we're well above the state, you know that there is work to be done in the high school level because the achievement is not quite where we want it. So we look at the SAT language arts. You'll see there's been a increase in the number of students who are performing in that lowest band. So while that's going up slightly, there's been a slight decline at the students at the 3 and 4 level. If you look at last year's 73.1% to this year's 71.4%, that represents about 4 students. We need to look further as to how we can stop this trajectory. From the cohort of the PSATs, the average score went up significantly from the PSAT 17-18 of 492 to the SAT, same cohort, of 524. But the percent of students who've met or exceeded went down. This means that the students who are maintaining proficiency did really well, but we still need to figure out why the same number of students aren't maintaining proficiency. So we look at the SAT math portion of the test. We see there's been a slight decline in the number of students in that met or exceed band. The numbers represent about 5 students. And there's been a slight uptick in the amount of students in the very lowest band. So we look at the matched cohort again. You can see that while the average score went up from 481 to 515, again the number of students in that met or exceeded band went down. And the high school is looking at those reasons and to show kind of next steps in general. At the district level, we're continuing to implement the strategic plan. The established data analysis team will look at this information, as well as the admin, and the principals are having their school leadership teams look at this and present to their faculty. District PLCs will look at this, and in all the schools, the school growth plans are focusing on the high needs population, which is ELL, special ed, and free and reduced lunch students, as to how we can differentiate to support the needs of all learners. At the elementary level, you can see just a few steps that are the principals are doing consistently amongst the 3 schools. So look at not only the academics, but the social emotional health and wellness of all students. At the middle school, you can see how the middle school is diving into the 2 components of the test. And at the high school, while the scores aren't where we want, the high school is already in process of a math curriculum renewal. The department is revising the curriculum, is piloting the top 3 best math instructional resources, using the Ed report as a barometer for selection of those top 3. Professional development is underway with grade school partnerships, with workshops on effective teaching strategies and differentiation in the classroom soon to come. The administration and teachers will be trained, as Tom said, with the Decision Ed training, which will allow them to access real-time data. And as you have recalled, in the past, we've instituted a link class to Algebra 1, which should also be a supportive measure. So at this time, be happy to address any questions the board may have on the report.
First of all, I'd like to commend everyone for the wonderful uptick of all of our sports. I think it's been a concerted effort for the last 3 years. We pushed and pushed and pushed, but I see that there is great gains in the elementary and middle school, and now we've shifted, as you said, and you're well aware of, to the high school. I have some real concerns about a couple of spots, but I think you're right on target of finding those spots at the elementary school. I think it was grade 4, something that went down a little bit, and I think you're working on that. But the real concern is the high school. And if you take a look at page 26 of 36 that we got, for the high school recommendations of what we need to do to improve our plan to improve. A lot of it, the 3rd bullet says that identify trends in both who is doing poorly and the types of questions where our students struggle. That's fantastic. But we get down to one of the other bullets, and it says that you kind of broke the group into those with lack of motivation and those with, where is it?
It says it in this thing.
Towards
Scale,
yeah.
upward,
Right.
Sentence in the last one.
You're right, you were breaking it up with some, the kids that don't try and the kids that need more academic
Yeah.
boost. So I took that to mean, as you said, that it might be the ELL and our SPED students who are, not quite getting it, and we need to do something in that area. Now, I just noticed you added free and reduced lunch as one of the categories.
Mhm.
And I didn't ask for the statistics of the free and reduced lunch, and maybe that is a big impact. So I asked for additional information, which you provided very nicely. And out of the kids that are doing poorly, only 50% are ELL and SPED. 50% of those kids that are in those last 2 bands, and I consider approaching just as bad as not meeting. And so if 50% of those kids are regular kids that are not getting the academics or something that they need some sort of boost. I think we are talking about an 11th grade test, and we noticed that these kids in 8th grade had some problems, and in 7th grade, those were the same group that initiated the whole campaign. I have a couple of suggestions. I think number one, we can't wait until 11th grade to get the statistics on these kids. We need to do something so we have 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and I'd even like to see 12th grade, some sort of indication and report on all the years, just like we do in the elementary and middle school. And I don't think it would be that costly to have those measures. We need more than one measure. One measure isn't enough to really see what the problem is. And I know we talked about the MAP tests and things like that, but they don't, I don't even think, does the MAP have an ELL and a math component?
They do, but the purpose of that test is really more formative in nature than SAT or PSAT, which is more summative in nature. So
Right.
I
So it
understand.
doesn't have a goal, you've gotta reach a certain plateau at a certain age or something like that. It's more of, that's what you know, no matter what your age is.
It has expected growth targets as well, but it's really used more to drive instruction and to help along the way. What you're suggesting is if administration would look at, do we need to administer the PSAT 8-9, the PSAT, we do the PSAT in 10, that's a Board of Ed budgeted item. In the 11th grade, do we do a PSAT or SAT option? In the fall, the state pays for the spring summative test, so that's something that we're in initial discussions with administratively.
I know when we talked earlier, you said that is a possibility. And I definitely think we have to have more measures at the high school to see what's going on. Because we can't wait until they're 11th graders to see that they're failing. If 52% of our population is not, it might be over the state standard, but it's not up to Waterford standards.
I agree.
Waterford standards should always be, in my opinion, in the 70s, and we're a far cry from the 70s. Half of our kids, more than half of our kids, are not making the expected level that they need to make in math. And even in language arts, it's not that pretty either. So we need to have some measures, especially with our goals being data-driven. It just makes more sense. I know a lot of people are against testing and testing and testing, but they do give us some indication. It's like when you go to the doctors. If you don't have the diagnostic test that tells you what's wrong, you can't do something about it. Because if we just think that it's some of the kids are not trying, and or that most of the kids are in SPED or EL, it doesn't work. That isn't a factor, according to the statistics that the added information you gave me. So that's my suggestion, that we do
Thank you.
additional testing.
Jody?
Craig, the questions, the way the SAT is set up, it's different from the SVAC testing, correct?
It is.
Okay, so grades, basically K through 8, we're getting them ready for SVAC. And then in 9th grade, you're starting to get them ready for SATs. Is there a way to kind of put the SATs in a little bit in the middle school curriculum so it's,
Well,
because
certainly.
they're different tests, and I could see where they can get, it's just different learning.
I mean, certainly if we have strong instruction, how we measure it, we should measure the success of the instruction.
Mm-hmm.
So Marcia was saying, are there different measures to measure SAT-like?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one way to measure. We continually look at the curriculum and instruction, and we continually try to improve the curriculum and instruction so that if we teach really well, then kids should have success on the assessments. And the work that we've been doing with improving math instruction, elementary and middle school, is paying off.
Mm-hmm.
We're engaged in that.
I was really impressed with the grades. They did
We're
really well.
engaged in that work at the high school level. At the high school, they've gotten some feedback from the New England School of Accreditation, NEASC,
Mhm.
where we're using that feedback to drive the professional learning, to enhance where we need to go, and strengthen our instruction at the high school level.
Now, are the high school, because we have all the high school students take the SATs, the PSATs now, are they taking them seriously? The children that may not be going on to college, are they taking the test seriously?
Yeah, so, you know, that's,
I know my
It's-
youngest
it's
son
an
probably
unknown.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's, it
There's
really,
certification here from the teachers.
Do they
in the
realize
report
that
it's certainly
not all
unknown.
the kids are taking it seriously.
One of the strategies
thank you.
that the middle school used last year, heading into SBAC, was to have student conferences between teacher and each student individually. I don't know, do you wanna speak a little bit about that, Mr.
Yes, so,
Sass?
about a week before each kid took the SAT test, we reviewed their math.
Can you speak up a little?
Yeah, sure. About a week before the SBAC, you're welcome, Chris. We had conferences, every student had a conference with their LA or math teacher about their previous year's SBAC and their progress on math. And they had a nice discussion about weaknesses, reflecting on what they did in the classroom, and I sat in on a few of those, and it was pretty impressive. I think it was sort of a metacognitive thing where the kids felt like they owned the upcoming test more than in previous years. So they took it really seriously, so that's a piece of it. You know, I can't tell you that that's exactly, but I think it's a little piece of some of the increases, they just took it more seriously.
Yeah, my point in mentioning that obviously was, we're leaving no stone unturned. Curriculum instruction, we're embedding SAT questions at an earlier and more frequent basis within the context of the curriculum. It's strategies such as, you know, student-teacher conferences. You know, it's a balancing act, and when you hired me, I shared where I don't wanna work in a district that's gonna teach to a test.
Right.
So it's a balancing act.
I don't think any of us want that.
No, and that's not what I'm hearing tonight. Good instruction will lead to strong scores, and not that there isn't good instruction going on, but that instruction needs to be match what's being asked of students. So you're asking all the right questions and making all the right suggestions.
I just didn't want the onus of all this to be put on the teachers, you know, at the high school level.
Yeah,
Because I think there's a lot of things that come into play, you know, with high school kids.
Yeah, I think Mr. Hauser can maybe add to kind of like what the next steps are, to kind of contextualize that, Jody.
And, you know, you asked about, you know, students taking it seriously if they don't see themselves as college bound. Historically, before the SAT became the state test, Waterford High would typically have 80 to 85% of our students take the SAT. If you were to still look at the 80 to 85% who are the top performers,
Right.
they're blowing the doors off of it.
Yeah.
However, there is a big trick in, first of all, getting that other 15 to 20% ready for the test. And we've done a lot of work. As a matter of fact, this year's juniors will be the first group who come through with the algebra link in their 9th grade class. So they will have had much better exposure to what's referred to as the heart of algebra, which is really the key. It's about 60% of what the SAT math asks about is a skill set referred to as the heart of algebra. And in our old math model, they would have had 1 full year of exposure to that prior to the SAT. In our new math model, which we started 3 years ago, our juniors have now typically had 2 full years of exposure to that heart of algebra and using those to solve the kind of complex problems that show up on the SAT. So we're hoping to see a real benefit from that. It's just one of those, you know, like you said earlier, we need to be putting in interventions earlier than 11th grade. This was a 9th grade one. Those take a while to grow up to being the SAT scores. So we're very hopeful that we're gonna see the benefits of that coming in this year. And for that last, like I said, 15 to 20%, a big part of it really is getting them motivated, getting them fired up about it. I love what Jim's doing at the middle school with those conferences. Craig and I actually, just last week and earlier this morning, were talking about a high school version of that, using PSAT results with students and having them assess their own strengths and weaknesses that some other school districts are doing that sounds like it's got great promise to direct student
Sounds
learning and to be used as both a metacognitive and a motivational tool. So we're gonna be talking to some people in other school districts that are doing this about how they make it work, and then looking into whether we might want to, you know, add that to the preparation skills that we do here.
Jody?
If I may, with the capstone project coming up too, that's gonna be part of their graduation requirements. So I'm happy to see you're gonna be starting this in 9th, you know, at least 9th and 10th grade, you'll have that component of the algebra, because I think the kids are gonna really be challenged with a lot of things going on.
Oh, yeah, we do keep them busy.
Oh, yes, you do.
First of all, too, all the administrators, wow. That, I mean, we've really been pushing, the central office staff on getting the scores going, and you guys have been working with the teachers and the kids, and so really you should be celebrating. Something like this is, you should take a pause out to celebrate. So congratulations, and Craig, your epistle, your 6 page, it was marvelous. We read these things, so thank you. But I do have, I always have questions. The first is we're looking at cohorts, but in the beginning of your narrative, you said that they did change some of the SBAC tests. So are you seeing any bounds from them taking out like the performance assessment piece or anything like that?
That was the first year, so while it's the fifth administration, the cohorts we do were the 3-year
Since then,
cohort,
so none of that is in these
that's
cohorts?
correct, so
Okay.
you're talking about the exact same test.
You are?
If we did a 5-year cohort, then you would see that there's a 1-year anomaly of something different.
Okay. And the other question I had was about, oh, it slipped my mind. But if I think of it, I'll ask you after the meeting or send you an email.
All right, thank you.
Chris, you had a question?
I think we all have a different perspective, and I always go back to the ed site, and I think to the ed site is that that's where parents go and that's where people go when they're looking about where they're gonna send their child to what school district. So I think that we're driven by the ed site. And I feel like with this, it's like the broken window theory. So I say to you, as a suggestion or a thought, you have these coaches and you always hear about the coaches. Why not take half of the coaches, a quarter of the coaches, some of the coaches, and put the coaches at the high school level to help bridge the gap with these scores that are down. So I don't wanna call them extra, but I'll say if you have them and they're not in a teaching capacity and they're helping teachers, take some of those coaches to help the high school teachers or bridge the gap to help get those scores up. Because it's clearly, to Mem's point, it's worked at the elementary school level and the middle school level with the coaches. So take a portion of them, put them at the high school level to help bridge the gap on the scores. That's my thought.
Thank you.
Craig?
With the data warehouse, is that gonna help to maybe see some of these trends going forward?
Yeah, I think what it'll, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you can jump in for sure. I think absolutely, because, I've explained this before, is, we shared the assessment framework with you a month or two ago. So you can see all the different assessments that we're giving kids. Right now, teachers and administration have to go to 6, 7, 8, 9, a dozen different assessment warehouses to get a complete profile of a student. With Decision Ed, and we will demo it at a board meeting so you can see, like, what does the administrator see, what does the teacher see, because I think that would be important for you to see, because it is obviously a budgetary investment, is teachers are gonna be able to literally log on in the morning and have a dashboard with things such as who are the students at risk for attendance, who are the students at risk for discipline, and certainly from an academic standpoint, who's at risk. They're gonna be able to punch up a report with literally the click of a button to say, this student didn't make goal on SBAC, how have they done on math the last 5 years? What's the trend been? And this is all done now, but this is days and sometimes weeks of work through Excel to get this. I know Mr. Sachs spent a lot of time this summer, administration was trained this summer, and he ran a report in, I'll say minutes, and you said it literally
3
took you
days.
weeks
Yeah,
this summer
3 full
before.
days. Yeah.
So it's,
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And I guess additionally, with the review of the curriculum at the high school, we may have talked about this before, but some of the kids going from junior high math into high school, are the skills directly transferring so they're not like going into high school and go, what's this, and being hit with something that they really it almost seems foreign to them?
yeah, it's a
Like
good
there's
question. I'm
there's
gonna
a
ask
good
Craig,
transition.
he's gonna speak much more eloquently from me, but I think K-8, the model you're seeing in math, is much more of an inquiry-based approach where kids are presented with a challenge. I know some of you saw that on the tour. really struggle and wrestle with it, and that's that is the model we want to move to at the high school level, but you're going to have more depth.
Sure. So I do think we are preparing them with this inquiry model. I think kids are understanding the math and can apply it then to different situations as opposed to just learning the recipe of math and being able to like repeat the recipe. As we look at the high school, the best instructional resources out there for the high school level have the same inquiry approach. It's interesting that one resource that we are piloting in both algebra 1 and algebra 2 is being more successful in algebra 1 because the students have come up from this inquiry model than it is in algebra 2 where they've been used to a different form of math instruction. So in talking with the math department, we're putting a pause on the algebra 2 pilot until next year to see is it the material or is it the student readiness. So that's telling me that what's coming up and the algebra 1 is so strong that I do think our K-8 program is translating well to the high school.
And that's, what I was kind of asking was whether that's kind of like almost like a lagging kind of thing where the kids are just catching up and then they get hit with the SAT and they're like, it's still kind
Well,
of
the
fresh for them.
SAT, as well as the SBAC, is really also looking for that inquiry approach, for thinking, for applying. So it's measuring how we're teaching.
Okay. Thank you.
Remembered what it was. Sorry. The math resources that we approved that you're now using, that you believe have led to that middle school jump, really it was a jump.
One of the factors, but yes.
But when did, I thought we were only piloting that last year.
So we did a full so 2 years ago, we piloted 3 resources.
Right,
We selected one. Last
Right.
year, we did a full school pilot.
so everybody used it
So
last
everyone
year.
used it, and we adopted at the end of last year.
But they were using it.
But they were
so
using
that
it for the
is
full
directly
year.
related to the SBAC.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as I said, the middle school is piloting that resource for algebra 1 and algebra 2, as well as 2 other highly rated resources for algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry
Okay.
within this pilot.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, great job.
Thanks for your work, Rick.
Tom?
Just a few other items. I want to thank Clark Lane for the artwork, both in the room and in the hallway. I want to share that we have our first Superintendent Parents Liaison Council meeting tomorrow morning at 7:45, bright and early. We'll have a special presentation by Dan Lane, who is going to review some school safety procedure enhancements that we're implementing with staff and students this year. And he's going to also feature that same content at our Parent Academy night on October 29th. We are finalizing plans for our November 5th PD Day. We had a PLEC meeting this morning. That is a regional PD day as well, and again, Waterford is an integral member of the regional PD and something we feel there's great value in. Veterans Day programs, planning is underway. We'll see some programs across our schools on Friday, November 8th. Parent-teacher conferences are Monday, November 11th. High school drama just celebrated a wonderful production of The Diary of Anne Frank. Very highly emotional, but very positive feedback in the community, so we thank our high school for good work there. We had our first annual Waterford Senior Services Day in the Waterford Public Schools this week. I know Marcia was there, and it really was a special day. We featured the high school. They spent about an hour and a half hearing some information about the high school and touring the facility, and I received a lovely note back from Waterford Senior Services. They all remarked that they felt like celebrities with how well they were treated at the high school.
It was a great day.
It really was. And last but not least, just want to remind the board that our meeting in November is earlier than normal to avoid the holidays, so we will meet on Thursday, November 14th. That concludes the superintendent's report for tonight.
Thank you, Tom. Committee and other reports, any Board of Education committee reports?
You want a policy report?
Please.
Okay, policy committee met on October first, and we continue to renumber and rid decimals and relocate the 1435 series to the 9000 series. We also, are moving to the board, with the correction, the 4115.3 to 4168, which is, I believe it was the use of, gifts, was that the gift one? Oh, no, that was the other policy, that, no personal gifts of $50 or more. I forgot what that 4115.3, Craig, was.
I'm looking, I'm
Oh,
trying
there
to
was a
help you
typo
out.
in it?
409?
I forgot. What was it that we, I just said we made a correction, but I don't have what the correction was.
It's a 4,000 series of deletion, you know.
Yeah, I think it was a typo, I think it was a typo.
I think it was that.
Anyway,
We'll be bringing that up to the board.
it'll come up tonight, because it's moved to the board.
Thank you, Marcia. Any other committee reports from the board itself? Any liaison representative reports? Jody?
Okay, I have
welcome to-
a youth service bureau report. They're getting ready for Thanksgiving and Christmas. They're gonna make sure families in town, if they need anything, they just have to call youth services and fill out a form, and they'll be able to help them. All the after-school programs are full right now. The counseling still is very, very busy. And I was able to attend the Brian Daigle dinner that they had Saturday. The Daigle Foundation is fantastic, and they've been helping Youth Service Bureau too with their counseling. Our veterans coffee houses, we had our first one that I told you about last month, and our next one will be on Tuesday, November 12th. And so far, so good. They've been going really well. And on Thursday, November 7th, we're going to be doing Stuff the Bus. We're going to be visiting all the schools. And last year, the kids were great. I'm looking forward to it again this year. The children are asked to donate canned goods or things like that, and they can come out and put it on the school bus. And they really do stuff the bus. They do a great job. And I just wanted to let everybody know, too, that we only have 2 more home football games, one on November 1st, next Friday, and then November 8th, and that'll be our last home game for the season. We are playing East Lyme, but East Lyme's the home field this year, the home team. And I'd like to thank Jay for helping me in the concession stand, get everything all cleaned up and everything, so thank you.
Thanks, Jody. Any other board liaisons? Any reports from liaisons to this board? Okay. New business, budget calendar. Tom?
Sure, this is really an informational item versus an action item. And believe it or not, we have started our budget planning for FY '21, hard to believe. Really relevant to the board are the February dates of our special budget workshops and then approval at the end of the month. You will have noted under correspondence, I sent a memo to the Board of Finance asking for an extension over what town departments might receive to submit our budget. I'm sure they'll act on that soon. I don't expect any issue with that. But if again, it's not an action item, but if there was a glaring problem with the workshops scheduled in February, we would certainly adjust those.
Okay. First reading of policies. Craig?
Sure. So, in front of you tonight is old policy number 1313, which was gifts to school personnel. As we're doing our policy review of the entire manual, it was recommended that we break this up into gifts for employees, and then employees to students and family members. And so you see the recommended changes tonight And we were gonna be renumbering that into the 4,000 series, which is more personnel.
Comments, questions from the board? It's the first reading, so we'll come up at our next meeting.
Yep.
Uh,
Next would be the deletion of the policy in the non-certified portion of the 4,000 series. We did the deletions before. It was a omission of the non-certified ones. So this mirrors some of the deletions in the certified part of the personnel policy.
And this we can act on tonight, correct?
Correct.
Someone care to make a motion to approve the change? In favor, second. Any discussion? No.
No discussion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I forgot you were there.
Second reading, policy 1030.
Right, and so, again, this is just a little more clarity and clarity and cleanup from the relationship with parent organizations, our PTO, PTA, OSO, and PAC committee. So, if there's any questions, happy to answer it, otherwise recommending for approval tonight.
Jody?
You included the Waterford High School graduation party in that?
Yeah, safe grad.
That's-
Yeah, that was on the advice of legal counsel.
I'm glad you did. 'Cause that always concerned me over the years.
So it was legal counsel that recommended, even though it said such as, you list all the ones that exist now.
Now, but then the such as would be just in case
Okay.
there's expansion in the future.
Any other questions? Got a motion to approve it as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, it would be the second reading of the renumbering of the 4,000 series and 7,000 series as attached.
Any questions? Got a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, they're just, who changed the numbers?
So-
Like, why did they have to change?
Yeah, so as we're doing this policy cleanup, the goal we're trying to solve is, we have policies with decimal points and numbers after the decimal point, so the Board of Ed can organize its own policy manual as it is. So we looked at the amount of policies we had in there, and we kind of divvied it up with spaces in between. So if new policies
Okay.
need to come in place, we kind of can fit them in nicely without having to use the decimal point and
But one of
beyond.
them is a different, a couple of them are different series.
Correct, so.
5,000 to the 4,000.
Correct, so as we, again, we're doing cleanup, we noticed that
They're in
some
the wrong
were
place.
kind of misplaced and not really more of a student personnel, but more of a personnel policy, so it was moved from the student section, the 5,000 series, to the 4,000 and alike.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We now need to go into executive session. We invite Mr. Giard and Mr. Mancini for the purpose of discussion concerning the agreement between the Waterford Board of Ed and the United Public Service Employees Union, which are the Waterford Board of Ed custodians and maintenance employees. Someone would care to make that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. As soon as clear.
You go have fun.
Be in executive session.
Thank you.
I'll be thinking
I'll
about
sign
it.
whoever you want for that.
Good.
Goodbye.